Welcome to Beast the Odds. I am BEASTDOME, and tonight, first, we're gonna go over what happened with Drew Brees, a detailed look at the injury with Dr. Jesse Morris. Then I have my Beast or Bust waiver wire pick of the week. All that right after this.
Fantasy football is a lot like golf. First you have the drive, which in this case we can call the draft. Then you have the shots to get to the green in regulation, aka playoffs. This includes waiver wire, trades, start, sit. Once you do everything right, you knock in the easy putt and win your championship. If you decide not to sign up for any of the Beast season packages, you could find yourself out of the playoffs despite your Beast roster.
Welcome back to Beast the Odds. We are joined by Dr. Jesse Morris. We're going to go over the injuries that happened week 2 and the fantasy implications you can see on BEASTDOME.com, but we'll be talking about it generally. So, Jesse, first of all, thank you for being back with us once again.
My pleasure.
The first person we're going to ask about is a legend for the BEASTDOME Nation. I ranked him as my number 1 QB this year, so everyone draft him around round 7, round 8, sometimes round 6. Drew Brees, tell us what we need to know.
So Drew Brees suffered a really unfortunate and potentially significant injury. If you look at your thumb, the inside of the thumb is something called the ulnar collateral ligament. We have several of these in our body. The most common one is the elbow, but the one in the thumb is very important to grip and to throwing. This is traditionally torn in baseball when a player slides and catches his hand on the bag and it tears. Brees accidentally hit his thumb on, I think it was Donald, and it tore it. If you look at the exam on the sidelines, you can actually see his thumb, instead of moving like mine, which is normal, his actually would split, and this part would go farther than it should. And that means there's a full thickness tear here. He saw Dr. Shin yesterday, who's a renowned hand specialist, hand surgeon at Curl and Job, which is in LA. He's going to a second physician opinion, I believe in Houston, probably tomorrow. But this is going to require surgery. In a baseball player, this is a 4 to 6 week injury, but in a football player, it's not very common, and the grip is a lot wider for a football, especially since it's throwing hand. It could be anywhere from 6 weeks up to 10, and I would not be surprised if it was closer to 10, depending on bye week. And if he just can't feel comfortable with that hand, he'll keep sailing the ball. So this is an unfortunate injury for Brees.
Well, luckily for Brees, the bye week is by week 9, so that puts it right around the 6-7 week window, and hopefully he can return right after the bye, because the reason why I love Brees so much was his schedule from week 10 to week 15. It's just pure dome games, so if he can make it back for that. But now here's the question: is Brees going to be the same Brees when he returns?
Yeah, I'm not worried about Brees' injury after he gets it surgically repaired. But until he does, he won't be the same. He needs to have this repaired.
Okay, so once he's repaired, he'll be back to vintage Drew Brees like nothing happened.
Correct, yeah. This is one of those where you set it and forget it. Like, you don't really worry about it. Mike Trout had this injury a year or 2 ago, and it's like it never happened.
Okay, well, I know the BEASTDOME Nation's going to be very happy to hear that. He will make a full recovery. Let's talk about last year's BEASTDOME quarterback. He led the NFL in passing yards, Big Ben. What's going on there?
Yeah, Big Ben reportedly was dealing with some inflammation in his throwing elbow the past week, and Mason Rudolph had found about this a little bit of information last week, so he was kind of mentally gearing up. Unfortunately, the straw that broke the camel's back was this past weekend. And he reportedly suffered a tear in his ulnar collateral ligament, but instead of his thumb, this is in the inner aspect of his elbow. This is the same surgery that baseball pitchers get for Tommy John surgery. Same surgery, traditionally not used as much in football throwing because it's a different mechanism. It's not over the whole shoulder. It's a little bit of, it's not wrist, it's more overhead, but this is season ending. This is at least 6, probably closer to 12 months because of the mechanism. It's a little different. Baseball pitchers take 12 to 14 months. This is a little bit unprecedented waters for NFL quarterbacks. You remember, he's in his late 30s, so it sounds like he's trying to gear up for 2020, but I don't know.
Yeah, you think last year he led the NFL in passing yards? You think that was the last we'll see of Big Ben?
I hope not.
Vintage Big Ben.
I really do, but
vintage Big Ben, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is he doesn't have the weapons he did. I mean, Antonio Brown, as crazy as he is a beast. Juju may not be able to handle the type of coverage that he's going to get with Brown gone. With James gone, they're trying to rely more on McDonald, but he's been okay. He hasn't been, like, awesome. I kind of like Moncrief, but he's got a broken finger. Washington is going to do really well with Rudolph, but he's never really done much with Big Ben. And then Connor's banged up with his own injuries. So in the long run, I think they'll be okay with Rudolph, but remains to be seen what's going to happen in 2020.
Let's transition to running back. So James Conner, what do we need to know what's going on there?
He got really lucky. That's basically what you need to know. He hyperextended his knee. He reportedly got an MRI. He was on a radio station this morning saying basically he was okay. Everything was fine. He may play this week. It depends on how his knee responds. But overall, I'm not overly concerned, but I would probably give him a good week to kind of feel better. He does have a history of multiple knee issues in the past, predominantly the MCL, which is the ligament that runs north to south on the inside of the knee. It sounds like he may have sprained this again. We don't obviously know the specifics, but I'm not overly concerned about this, but I don't think he'll be 100% for at least probably 2 weeks at the minimum.
Okay, so Jalen Samuels, more snap count in upcoming weeks. How about David Johnson? He struggled. What's going on with him?
So he actually, I was at the Patriots-Dolphins game, massacre, so I didn't see much video or any really video from yesterday's injuries, but I did happen to catch his. He took a shot. It was kind of in the pile, so we really couldn't see specifics, but he left clutching his kind of left arm, and this is the same wrist that he had surgery on a couple of years ago. The good news is that he came back into the game later, and he ended up scoring a touchdown. I mean, he wasn't very effective overall, but the fact that they cleared him means that A, it wasn't overly significant, and B, the x-rays were negative. Whether or not it's a potentially significant injury and they get an MRI today and they show something, we don't know. But until we find out more, I'm playing this off as if he's good to go in week 3.
Okay, well, that's good to hear for David Johnson owners. What's going on in Kansas City? LaShawn McCoy and Damian Williams on the report. They need them both dearly in order to be the vintage Chiefs offense. What do we know?
First of all, this team is bananas. Like, it's crazy. Damian Williams, neither of these have been confirmed. We've heard rumblings. I don't have details, like confirmed details on either from either the coaches, players, or beat writers or whatever. It sounds like Damian Williams may have also got lucky and it's just a contusion or a bruise, which means he could probably play next week. On the other hand, LaShawn McCoy underwent an MRI on his ankle, and there has been really no comments. So when I hear no comments, I get worried. That usually means there's something bigger going on, and we really don't know what to expect. You still have Darrell Williams sticking around, but this may be Darwin Thompson time, and I'm really high on him. He's just gifted. You can see it in his preseason running and whatnot. And if you look back at his college tape, it's solid. So I think this may be his time, especially with the two guys ahead of him banged up. But right now, we don't really have confirmation of either. Hopefully, in the next couple of days, we will.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned the radio silence on the McCoy injury is usually not a good sign. And yes, Darwin Thompson was a very solid running back this preseason, would definitely garner value. Few running backs that also ended up on the report: Joe Mixon, Mark Ingram. Are these new injuries right here?
Mixon is not a new injury as far as we know. He just obviously didn't look 100%. He looked pretty awful. I mean, the 49ers really took it to him. But, I mean, both him and Gio just didn't do anything on the ground. I know that even with a mild lateral ankle sprain, there's no way he was 100% within a week. Like, it's not going to happen. So let's hope that he got lucky and didn't have any setbacks. But at the same time, he needs to make. I don't know what his upcoming schedule is, but hopefully he did okay in week 2 and he's ready to rock and roll for week 3 with a hopefully more potential game. I warned people about this on Sunday morning, saying I know he's active, but I don't trust him, and the concern was validated. As far as Mark Ingram, he was coming in with a banged up injury with shoulder, but. We haven't heard anything. He played most of the game, so I don't have any really details. Lamar Jackson just went bananas and rushed like crazy, so he didn't. We really didn't even see any rushing yards from the other running backs. Another one, a couple more to throw in there that I'm not sure if you're aware of or whatnot, is Josh Jacobs with a groin injury for the Raiders.
Okay, how serious is that?
Groin injuries can linger. These can be concerning, especially for a running back. I mean, if you go back to his time in Alabama, he was never a bell cow. He was never a workload. So the fact that he's already, he got 20-something carries the first game, he only got 9 or 10. He was on the cusp of a 100-yard game, and then he never hit it, and he still had like a quarter and a half to go. And I could have used the bonus points, but so that. That was concerning. I mean, he may play this week, but I don't know if I feel good about it. He's at high risk for re-injury. And then Devin Singletary, the kid from my alma mater at FAU, he looked fantastic, but so far, but he suffered a hamstring. Sounds like he may have got lucky and it's only a grade 1, but even grade 1 should be respected, and probably miss a week or 2. So it may be time for Grandpa Frank Gore again.
Or TJ Yeldon from Ballers, who is the next coming of Walter Payton. I don't know if you caught that scene. But yeah, so on your thing about Jacobs, they're going up against the Vikings next week, so that's pretty much in Minnesota, you must bench him in that situation, more or less. Yeah. That's and their top wide receivers banged up too, so that may be an ugly game. You're the king.
Maybe Washington.
You're the king of segues right here. Now let's go into wide receiver and talk about Tyrell Williams. What do we need to know there?
So Tyrell Williams suffered what we call a hip pointer. He was like the steal of DFS last week because they played on Monday night, and the prices were locked coming into week 2. So he was like 4,400 on DraftKings, and man, even if we're at 12 points, that's a smash spot. So he was ridiculously high owned. He did okay. He got enough points to justify it, but I don't know if he left early, if he just didn't produce like he should have with a hip pointer. A hip pointer is basically a bruise to the back part of the hip, kind of at the top of the buttocks kind of area.
Okay.
OBJ had this about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Not overly concerning, a little uncomfortable, but these heal really without much issues in a week or 2 for the most part.
Just need a couple of masseuse to come in there and rub them down. You'll feel better.
Yeah, and just wait for the kind of the swelling and the inflammation to go down. Most of the time, with the modalities we have and just the resources that they have, these guys are usually 100% by like 2 weeks or so.
Do you think he'll play next Sunday, no problem?
Yeah, I mean, he'll probably be like day to day, or he may miss a practice, but he'll play.
Okay.
I don't know how effective he will play.
Yeah, but against the Vikings, like we just said, probably don't even want to throw him in there for that one. Yeah, I feel you. And let's talk about, everyone was hyping up Michael Gallup after a huge week 1 against the Giants. He started doing his thing against Washington week 2, 2 good matchups. Then he got injured. What do we know?
So I saw the video for what we think is when it happened. He took a shot to the knee with a helmet, and that's not a typical injury mechanism for the knee, but he tore his meniscus. The meniscus is essentially the shocks for your knee. So think of like You basically, if you were to take off like the top part of your knee and you look straight down, you'd have two semicircular rings. Each of those is an independent ring that is kind of like the shocks for the knee. The problem is they can tear. So if they tear, leads to a lot of pain, kind of like they describe it as like a lightning bolt. It's very uncomfortable. A lot of swelling, and any movements that require twisting of the foot, which is pretty much everything we do, you get this kind of lightning bolt pain. If he had the luxury, he probably would have waited 4 to 6 weeks and he probably would have been okay. Since he's a professional athlete, he doesn't really have that luxury in season, and he had a knee scope, or is going to have a knee scope. This is what DK Metcalf had about a month ago, and he's looked quite good. Sonny Michel had it last year. Chris Carson had it in the offseason. Very common. These guys get back pretty good, almost 100% in about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. In the short run, not overly concerning. Long run, a little bit of a different story. He's at risk for re-injury.
Let's talk about the two Eagles receivers. Both Alshon and D-Jax went down. What's going on with them?
Man, I mean, there was like a battle zone last night. It was a great game. They were losing players left and right. Alshon's dealing with a calf injury, and what you should know about calf injuries is that they hurt, man. Even a grade 1 mild one, these things hurt. Like the gastrocnemius, which is the big thick muscle on the back of your leg, the back of your calf, is the muscle we use for propulsion. So you need it to run hard. You really can't run without it. You need these re-injure really easily. So if you return too soon, you're going to suffer either a setback or a worsening of that injury. So these honestly are probably going to take a good 2 to 3 weeks, best case scenario. I mean, Derrick Henry had one. We saw Andrew Luck had one. These can be annoying. You respect him and give him time, because it will linger all season if he doesn't. And I really don't expect him to play for a couple weeks. And if he does, he's going to be at high risk for re-injury, and every week he does play. Okay. As far as Deshaun Jackson, the speedster, he's also dealing with a groin injury like Jacobs. Given the importance of the groin, which is surprisingly important and very painful, this basically is responsible for any movement where you pick up your hip and you rotate it. That's basically a lot of groin. So that's basically what these guys do, trying to get off of coverage, trying to make cuts. So he may play this week, but I don't expect him to be very effective. He's also at risk for re-injury, but not quite as crazy. He'll be closer to 100% in 2 to 3 weeks, but he'll be reasonable in the next 2 weeks. I don't really expect him to be effective in week 1, especially since he's predominantly a speed guy, and he's going to need this to build up the speed.
I love the player comparisons, and I also love the action you showing us how it's affecting the players. Based off of what we're talking about right here, it sounds like Nelson Aguilar is a guy you want to add on your fantasy teams for the next couple weeks. Get that production while these guys deal with injuries that they can't force them back on the field too soon.
Yeah, and Goddard's down with a calf still. He re-injured it. He was dealing with it in the preseason, and then he's injured. He re-injured it last night. So, I mean, they are pretty decimated. You basically have Ertz. You have a banged-up D-Jax if he plays. You have Aguilar, and then you have like Mac Hollins, and then like J-Jaw, RCO Whiteside, who went bananas in the preseason but didn't really do anything last night. I think Aguilar, besides dropping the go-ahead touchdown, I think he got like 10 or 12 targets or something. So that's probably going to be his guy, and that may be your sneaky play in week 3 if you can get him.
Definitely. And then a couple more players from the Rams-Saints game that got injured. Tyler Higbee, is it something serious there?
Initially they said he was coughing up blood on the sidelines.
A little serious.
Which initially sounds very concerning. It sounds like he took a shot to the rib, or indirectly the lung, which can burst a little bit of small blood capillaries, the blood vessels. this causes a tickling effect, which in essence causes you to split up blood. It sounds like he didn't fracture any ribs or have any significant injuries to the lung. He does have a lung bruise or contusion. These can be a little concerning because what can happen is these guys don't want to take deep breaths because it hurts, which then increases their risk for pneumonia, which we don't think about as athletes, but it can happen. So they have to be smart about this. I'd kind of be surprised if he played, or if he did. He's definitely not going to be 100%. He's kind of a decoy, really, anyway. But that's kind of what he's dealing with.
Wow, so definitely a serious injury there. And then the man who's shot out of a cannon every time he catches the ball, Traquan Smith.
Yes, so Traquan Smith, I've seen some rumblings of this. I haven't confirmed it. This is a high ankle sprain from what we've heard. This is compared to a traditional ankle sprain, which is basically on the outside of the foot. This or ankle. This is above above kind of the shoe, and this is a very painful injury. If this is indeed a high ankle, he's probably going to miss at least 4 weeks, maybe closer to 6. This is not an injury you want to come back on because it's very painful, and you can have a very serious injury, kind of like OBJ had a couple of years ago, if you return too soon. They don't feel right for a couple of weeks. A lot of the times they're even in crutches or on like a wheeled scooter or something. So my suspicion is he's probably going to miss weeks 3, 4, 5, somewhere around there, which is obviously not good. Maybe a bump to Ted Ginn. So there's a couple of sleepers this week. Devin Smith of the Cowboys, Ted Ginn maybe, obviously Robinson of KC, and then we have guys like, briefly who we talked about earlier with Aguilar. So, I mean, the waiver wire is starting to kind of come together already.
Well, we started with the Saint with Drew Brees. We ended with the Saint and Traquan Smith. And Dr. Jesse Morris, you're a saint for being here on Beast the Odds. Thank you for being with us tonight.
My pleasure. You guys have a good week. We'll see you at the end of the week.
We'll see you Friday. Beast! After 2 touchdowns and 100+ yards, Demarcus Robinson is the flavor of the week. But what type of flavor are we really getting here? The Chiefs are stacked with talent. Sammy Watkins, Travis Kelce, these guys are the go-to options for Patrick Mahomes. There's no getting around it. Then when you got the rookie Hardman, Demarcus Robinson is more or less in a committee full of wide receivers. Patrick Mahomes never locks and loads onto one guy. Yes, Robinson will have a few good games in this 4 to 6 week stretch that Tyreek Hill is out. But once Tyreek Hill comes back, Hardman, Robinson, Watkins, Kelce, there's too many Chiefs for everything to go around. Bust.
Sure, you can duel with kings, but are you ready to be the GOAT? Fantasy sports just went crypto. Welcome to GOAT, the global fantasy sports platform powered by Digital Fantasy Sports, DFS Token. GOAT allows users to connect and compete globally with their DFS while playing fantasy sports. From thrilling pick'em games to the classic salary cap style gameplay to season-long fantasy and even live drafts, Digital Fantasy Sports GOAT has you covered. Visit GOATFantasy.com.
That is all for tonight on Beast the Odds. If you want my weekly rankings, my Monkey Night Fight picks, and my draft strategy, sign up for the promos below in the description. Send me a DM with your username or an email at beast@beastdome.com. Thank you to Dr. Jesse Morris. Play GOATFantasy.com. I'll see you soon. Beast!